You worked under Governor Milliken, but you also worked under Governor Blanchard.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, after the election, Governor Blanchard was elected, I did not know Governor Blanchard. I did not work on the campaign. I was working on the Brickley campaign, and he lost to Dick Headley. I'm looking for a job. I have a political appointment. I'm looking for a job. I have a family. I get a call from Jim Blanchard's staff that the governor-elect would like to see me. So I get a one-to-one meeting with the governor-elect. He shakes my hand, and he says, "Would you like a Coke?" And I said, "Sure." And he hands me a twist-top Coke. And I'm so sweaty, I can't open it. But I do not lose it. I said, "Excuse me, Governor." I called him. I got up, I got a towel, I opened it up. And he said that you've been highly recommended. I'd like you to stay on as my deputy budget director because I need some transition in terms of what's going on. And I said, I'd be honored to do so. And I was. I was very much honored. The budget director who came in at that time was a gentleman by the name of Phil Jordan. Phil Jordan lasted about 8 months or so and then went on to become the chief of staff for the governor. And the acting director was somebody by the name of Doug Roberts, who really wanted to become director of management and budget. But because of my stint with the Milliken administration, that was just not to be. Okay. And the person who followed the budget director then was a guy named Bob Naftali, very good person, did an excellent job. And so, I mean, I spent a whole year working with the Blanchard administration, but there were some really big stories in that first year.
Well, yeah, you had an income tax increase, a major income tax increase.
There was, and I'd like to go into that because I was there when it happened. You can't talk about Governor Blanchard's income tax without going back 1 year before in 1982. In 1982, I talked about the economy falling off, talked about all the cuts. Governor Milliken, in his very last year, proposed to the legislature a 1% increase in the income tax. Now, at this time, the world was a little different. You have a Republican governor, you have a Democratic legislature in both the House and the Senate, and the governor is not saying he'd sign it, he's leading. He's going out and saying we have to have a 1% increase in the income tax in order to save the budget. I'm not sure that would happen today, but well, it was very difficult to pass. So the House barely passed it, and the Senate took a long time to pass it. I won't go into all of that. Finally, there was a negotiation of 1% for 6 months, which is the same as 1/2 of 1%. But the point I'm trying to make, it's over now. It expires. Now, Jim Blanchard comes in. He's got the same budget problem. That income tax increase has expired. That just took care of 82. And he proposes to increase the state income tax from 4.6% to 6.35%, or a 38% increase. Well, this is a big deal. Now, I was in the room. I'm not arguing that I was one of the players. There were others who were big players, but I was in the room because I had numbers. And I must say, I supported the position that if you're going to raise the tax, raise it to what you need a little bit more. You're not going to gain any goodwill by saying, "Oh no, we'll stop at 5.5%." If you think you need 6.35, go for it. Well, they did. There was a lot of stories about this. This is a big issue because the world changed because of this event, in my opinion. And it affected my life, but I didn't know it. So I'm out trying to help people pass this 38% income tax. And the first thing, it goes to the House of Representatives. Again, I cannot tell you the difference in the world. Gary Owen was Speaker of the House. Gary Owen made it very clear to the Democrats that if a Democrat's on appropriations and doesn't vote for this bill, you're off. If you're a chair of a committee and you don't vote for this bill, you're off. And if you're a member of the caucus and you don't vote for this bill, maybe you ought to find another caucus. It was very clear. So it passes the House with really very tough language. It goes to the Senate, and the Democrats barely have enough votes, except that one of their members, Gil Danello, said absolutely not. He will not vote for it. They don't have the votes to pass it. Then a Republican by the name of Harry DeMassa said, "I'll vote for it." Well, it's going to pass by one vote. Now, I know this to be true. I don't remember all the details, but 6 Republican senators went to the Democrats, led by Bill Cederberg, and said, "We'll make it bipartisan, but we want some changes." The decision was made, and at the time, I'm not sure that I foresaw, nobody else foresaw what was going to happen. They said, "We don't need to negotiate. We got the votes, and we can pass it." And they did. So they passed it with one Republican vote, Harry DeMasso's. It then became a partisan issue. The reason this is so relevant is because none of us even thought about this. There were two senators who were recalled, Phil Maston and Dave Sorokin. And there was an election. They were just elected, by the way. They just elected to that. They were both recalled by like 2 and 3 to 1. It was crushed. Now, why is that important? Because then Minority Leader John Engler now becomes Majority Leader John Engler. And of course, part of the rest is now a little bit of history. But that was a very big moment in time.
And one of the reasons why it changed your life is because now Majority Leader John Engler at one point turns to you.
He does.
And
he used Majority Leader John Engler. At this time, I left the Department of Management and Budget and went over to work for the Department of Education. And I worked for the Department of Education for a number of years. Phil Runkle was the superintendent. I aspired to become the acting superintendent when Phil Runkle left. That was not meant to be. So be it. Then I get a call from Dan DeGrow, who says, would you like to become director of the Senate Fiscal Agency? And I said, no, not particularly. And okay. And then a little later, I get a call from John Engler, Majority Leader. He said, Doug, can I talk to you? And I said, Senator, you're the Majority Leader of the Senate. Of course I will talk to you. But is this the same issue that Senator DeGrow talked to me about? And he said, yes. And I said, I haven't changed my mind. He said, I just want to talk to you. Little did I know, for the rest of my life, when John Engler just says, all I want to talk to you, either don't show up or you're going to end up saying yes. All right? And lo and behold, I ended up saying yes, and I became director of the Senate Fiscal Agency. I was there for less than 2 years. The election was coming up. But let me just make a couple quick stories about less than 2 years at that job. First, I had a truly remarkable staff. I mean, a staff that to this day I'm so blessed to have had. And let me just give you an example. My deputy at Senate Fiscal Agency was a gentleman by the name of Gary Olson, who's since passed away. He became director of the Senate Fiscal Agency for 20 years, and in my opinion, the best I ever had.
he was somebody that if he told you something, you could take it to the bank.
He was wonderful. Then my chief economist was somebody by the name of Nick Corey, who is currently the state treasurer. Okay, my education specialist was a lady by the name of Ellen Jeffries. She's currently the director of the Senate Fiscal Agency. Rob Aben handled capital outlay. He went beyond to become a deputy of the Department of Transportation. When you have a staff, they may have been younger, but they were all talented. Man, as a director, all you got to do is go in and say, go forth and prosper. They were wonderful.
And Gary Olson worked for George Montgomery after you left, as
That's
I recall.
correct. I always kidded him that, I had to get there first so he could become director. So because I was always in front of him I was a little older. But he was wonderful. He did a terrific job, and I was very proud to have been part of it. There's another story that I want to tell right now, which is a human interest story that's almost still difficult for me to completely explain. And that is when John Engler was hiring me to become director of the Senate Fiscal Agency, I obviously knew how inside government worked. I obviously knew that the elected officials tell the directors sometimes, this is what I want you to do. I understood. But I said to Senator Engler, I said, look, you're the leader of the Senate. I said, if you want to tell the director of the Senate Fiscal Agency what numbers you want, like make them higher, make them lower, then don't hire me because I won't do that. And he said, no, it's okay. And he never did. You can work for some. I mean, to me, that was just, again, I'm just a person running an agency of which I saw it happen in the House. I saw it happen elsewhere. And I just told him right up front, if that's what you wanted, I was not your person. And he said, fine. And he never did.
And as you say, you were hired for 2 years shortly before the election of 1990, which surprised everyone, and probably surprised John Engler, that he ended up winning. And what was your job prospects after that?
It was pretty bright because after the election, a gentleman by the name of Jeff McCalvey, who was one of John Engler's, and still was, one of his assistants and on the floor, came to me and said, if the governor were to offer you a job, would you prefer to be director of management and budget or state treasurer? And I said, state treasurer. That job was almost like that's what it was meant to do. It's everything I enjoyed. I had the background for it. I mean, that's what that's what I wanted to do. And so I ultimately was appointed to become the state treasurer. The state treasurer is an absolutely terrific job in so many things. What people in Michigan take for granted but don't understand is state treasurer position in almost the rest of the country, and certainly the entire Midwest, and I mean 15 or 20 states, is an elected position, not an appointed position. In fact, it was elected in Michigan up until the '63 Constitution. All right? So therefore, the position is, I think, much more significant. It is something much closer to the Secretary of Treasury or the President in that you represent the boss, the governor, and you handle a lot of activities. So let me just give one statistic, boring or not. If you take the 15 or 20 state treasurers around in the Midwest, and I'm talking about Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, take their staffs, sum their staffs, and double that number. The staff of the state treasurer of Michigan is bigger.
Really?
My staff was 1,600. Okay? Illinois was 85. North Dakota was 5.